Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Then, just moments ago, we found out that Otega Oweh is officially going to declare for the draft. But the good news is, if you're a Kentucky fan, he is leaving his college options open. And so let's go ahead and discuss this from all angles. First of all, let me say this. Let me start with just some facts here. Otega Oweh, to me, was one of the great surprises in a good way in college basketball this year, as far as I'm concerned, okay? I remember doing all these shows at this time last year when UK was putting together its first roster under Mark Pope. And we talked about Lamont Butler and how good I thought he could be. We talked about Kobe Brea, how good I thought he could be. We talked about Amari Williams, how good I thought he could be. And so I only bring it up because the one guy that, to quote the Shaq meme, that I just was not familiar with your game, it was Otega Oweh, the transfer from Oklahoma. This was a guy that, listen, averaged 11 points per game, 37% three-point shooting. But if you watched Oklahoma, nothing really stood out about him. Didn't feel like he was a difference maker in any way, shape, or form. And I think in hindsight, that was probably more of an Oklahoma thing than an Otega Oweh thing, because it wasn't just Otega Oweh who was really good the second he left Oklahoma. It was also Milos Uzan, who was a starter on Houston's national runner-up team in the Final Four this year. Both of them were at Oklahoma. Both of them leave. Both of them thrive. But at the same time, here's the bottom line, is that when I look at this Kentucky team, I think Otega Oweh was one of the surprise breakout stars in all of college basketball this year. 16 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game. Now, the three-point percentage dropped to 35%. One, that's not bad. Two, it's also worth noting that he took about 25 more threes this year than he did a year ago. But three, here's what stood out to me about Otega Oweh. To me, Otega Oweh became a true college basketball star this year, and there are two things that really stood out. One, first of all, and this is no disrespect to anybody else, but by the end of the year, he was the only guy, and I give him so much credit, that every single night you knew what you were getting from him, okay? So you look at Kentucky's situation, you look at what happened with Kentucky, okay? Lamont Butler, this is no disrespect to Lamont. You guys know I love Lamont, known him since he was 13, 14 years old. But Lamont Butler was incredible early in the year. Then he goes down with a shoulder injury. Then he comes back. He re-injures it. He comes back. And by the end of the year, he clearly was not the same guy. That's not a knock on him. That's not to say he was a disappointment or didn't live up to it. It's just the fact that he had injury after injury. Jackson Robinson, slow start to the year, finally picks things up, gets injured. All of a sudden, boom, just like that. Jackson Robinson's out of the lineup. He tries to come back, ironically, against Oklahoma, gets hurt, is out for the year. Andrew Carr dealt with a back injury. Amari Williams was really good, but had moments where you just wanted a little bit more of him. And then there was Otega Oweh, who was just legitimately freaking awesome every single time he took the court. And that was the thing that stood out to me, is that every single night, while this guy's out of the lineup, while this guy's in the lineup, while this guy's doing this, while this guy's doing that, Otega Oweh just delivered. I mean, what was it? It wasn't until about late February when Otega Oweh finally had a game where he didn't score double figures. Kentucky ended up playing, let me see here, let me get my stats right. They ended up playing 36 games. Otega Oweh scored double figures, 33 of them. And, of the ones that he didn't, I mean, let's be realistic. The team was so beat up that he was kind of the focal point of the scouting report. So he showed up every single game. And I think the big thing was he played his best in when Kentucky needed him. We know about the buzzer beater the first time they played Oklahoma. We know about the buzzer beater the second time that they played Oklahoma. We know about 27 points in that return to Oklahoma, or in the SEC tournament, 28 points in the return to Oklahoma, 24 points in a game against Ole Miss, 21 points against Ohio State. Ohio State's the perfect example. He was the only one that showed up in that game. You go on and on down the list, was excellent against Duke with 15 points. And so I just bring it up because he was a guy that was better than I thought, came to play every single night, and the positive part was he turned into a star. Now, the negative is when you turn into a star, you're going to get notice from the NBA. And so let's talk about the positive and negative of this NBA thing. First of all, I think it's pretty clear. He's declaring to maintain eligibility. And this is something that even in this NIL portal world where, you might make more money playing college basketball, it's never declaring is still a thing that I think a lot of people are going to do, because at the very least, if you have eligibility left, you want to get in front of NBA scouts. It's not always about declaring to stay in the draft. It is sometimes declaring just to let NBA people know a little bit about you. Let me get you and let me get in your facility. Let me work out in front of your people. Let me talk to your front office people, talk to your coaching staff, talk to whatever. So yeah, maybe I'm going to be a second round pick this year, but now you have a baseline. So next year, we're not starting this process over. So to me, even a player in this NIL world declaring doesn't necessarily mean that they're 100% going to not return to college basketball. But obviously with Otega Oweh, the athleticism is there. The scoring is there. I do think, on the surface, you have to be at least a little bit worried about the possibility that Otega Oweh may not be playing college basketball next season. And so it'll be interesting to follow, because let's talk about positive and negative. It'll be interesting to follow to see what happens. Now, to me, I would never advise. I don't tell people what to do. Okay. This is one thing. If you're new to this show, we don't say somebody made the right decision, the wrong decision to return to college to go pro. Some kids don't like school. Some kids are ready to become a professional. Some kids need money. Sometimes the money in college isn't as good as you think. And so I just bring it up because if I was personally advising, I would say if you're not a for sure, not only a first round pick, but a pretty high first round pick, you should probably come back to college basketball because you're going to make more money at Kentucky. We don't have the exact dollar amounts for any of these players, but if star players are demanding $3 million in the portal, like a Donovan Dent, like a whoever, Otega Oweh is a $3 million player. I mean, if we're going through players that in theory could be the 20 most impactful players in college basketball next year, Otega Oweh is pretty near the top of the list. Okay. And so when I look at Otega Oweh, I just think that he is going to make a lot of money in college basketball next year, and he doesn't have to rush it if he's not ready to go play in the pros. And so to me, I think it becomes very interesting to see what his next step is. Now, if you're Kentucky, it's kind of that chicken and the egg thing. You want him to be successful, but you don't want him to be so successful that he ends up declaring. If Kentucky let's do negative first. Let's do glasses half empty, then we'll do glasses half full. The glasses half empty is obviously if he declares, that's a very tough situation, okay? It's a very tough situation because if he declares he's not only a star player, but let's call a spade a spade. You are not going to get a player of his caliber. If he's going to declare, it's probably going to be mid-May to late May that he announces that he's actually staying in the draft. And so if he declares, you're not getting a player of his caliber in mid to late May, almost certainly. Now, I will say it'll clear up some money, so if anybody that's available, you can go all in on. But the portal closes next week. And so if a player is not in the portal, you can't get him into the portal in mid-May if Otega Oweh decides to go pro. So if you're a Kentucky fan, it is again, whatever you want to call it, chicken and the egg, whatever, of you want Otega Oweh to be successful, but you're hoping that he isn't so successful that he isn't going to come back to college basketball next year. If he doesn't come back, we can have the conversation about the state of Kentucky basketball. But at the same time, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow if you're Kentucky. Now, the positive with that is this. He can go into the draft process. He can get feedback, and he can come back a better player next year. And I think, to me, if I'm a Kentucky fan, that's the more likely scenario. The bottom line is, again, very good player, but he's not a finished product. And again, I think what it comes down to is, do you want to go and maybe be the 27th pick, and then you're fighting for a roster spot, you're fighting for a roster, you're just hoping to get in the first round, and you're going to spend most of this time in the G League? Or do you want to come back next year after this past season when you average 16.5 points per game, 4.5 rebounds? Do you want to come back and average 19 a game or 20 a game and be a potential first-round pick? Listen, there are a lot of guys that could go pro, that we've seen could go pro, that end up coming back the extra year and improving their draft stock. I think that's the one thing that's changed about the NBA draft process over the last probably 10 to 15 years that I've been doing this, it used to be all upside, all upside, all upside, all upside, all upside. Now, most of these veteran teams, they need older players to step in and contribute. And now, if you're a player that can step in and you get better year over year over year, you're going to get your shot at the NBA level. I think as a UConn guy, Jordan Hawkins could have declared after his freshman year and been a second-round pick and grinded through the G League, whatever. Comes back, wins a national championship at UConn, ends up being a lottery pick with the New Orleans Pelicans. Donovan Clingan's a good example. That could have been a first-round pick after his first season. Instead, decides to return to college basketball for another year, ends up having a great deal of success, and ends up being a top 10 pick. I'm trying to see right now some like mock drafts of, let me see here, of some guys that would fit the bill this year. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, guys that could have been drafted last year that decide to come back. Let's see here. Let's see here. I'm just trying to find some guys. Not a lot of good ones this year. Walter Clayton. I mean, Walter Clayton's the best example, right? Second round pick last year, decides to come back. Only reason I bring it up is to very simply say that, in my opinion, if you are Otega Oweh, I think you're going to have good options. Right now, I would guess he's not going to be a first-round pick. If he's not a first-round pick, I think he's coming back. But this is obviously big news for Kentucky. And if you're Mark Pope, I'll say this. I'll say this with Mark Pope. I think you're going to be in a tough spot, kind of the same spot that Grant McCasland is in at Texas Tech, that Rick Pitino was in with RJ Lewis. We are now in the era where if you declare, we kind of got to know, like right now, do you think there's a possibility you're staying? Because if you think you're staying, we kind of have to recruit over you, and basically we can't hold your spot. Like, we can't find anybody of your capabilities. So anyway, I bring it up because that's a long way down the road. Otega Oweh has declared for the draft. I think the big question becomes what's next for him. And I think as importantly, what would be next to Kentucky if he does not come back to college? All right.